Hello and welcome back to Shakesyear. We are working on the troublesome reign of King John, and we get to hear from Constance today to finish off Act 1, Scene 4. So Constance is the mother to Arthur, who has the better claim to the throne, legally speaking, and she had gone to the King of France to try to get his help in defending that right. And the King of France said, yes, absolutely, I will help you. So they were parked outside Angers until the English showed up, and they tried to get John to give up his crown, and he's like, absolutely not. And John was like, hey, citizens of Angers, you tell them that I'm the king. And the citizens are like, well, you're both saying you're king, and that's not really for us to decide. So whichever one of you decides that you're king, we'll let that person in. So then there was a little bit of like a mini battle, a skirmish, not quite a full-on war, but definitely people died. And during that, the bastard got the lion's pelt back from Limoges and curses Limoges, but then they come back and nobody's actually won. Just a lot of people died on both sides. So both sides are like, okay, citizens of Angers, obviously you saw us win. And this first citizen is like, we didn't really see anybody win. Like, this doesn't seem to be settled. So like, you all need to figure it out. And the bastard, after flirting with Blanche, is like, why don't the two kings, King John and King Philip, join forces to level Angers, and then you can fight about who's the king of it afterwards. And the kings are like, that's not a bad idea. And the first citizen of Angers is like, I have another suggestion. Why don't you have Louis the Dauphin, from the French side, marry Blanche, who is the niece to King John, from the English side, and then you'll be family. And as part of her dowry, maybe she gets some territories in France that are currently occupied by the English, so then this whole thing can be settled, and like there won't be an England versus France, you all be one big happy family. So after some back and forth between the kings about which provinces they will give as part of the dowry and all of that, meanwhile Constance is yelling back here, she's like, what does this do to my son Arthur? What does this do to his claim? This is totally unfair. The kings decide that yes, they will have Louis and Blanche get married to each other, so they all go off to do that. And the bastard is a little bit upset about this too, because he thought he was supposed to get to marry Blanche, but Queen Eleanor was like, no, it's fine, I'll find somebody else for you. So now at the end of the scene, we basically just have Arthur and Constance left on stage, and Arthur's still a little bit optimistic. He's like, things change, times change, maybe this will come back around to us at some point. And Constance is like, oh, you're so young, you have no idea. Like, you don't know what these people are capable of. And Arthur's like, yeah, but like, what good is crying gonna do? And Constance says, if any power will hear a widow's plaint, that from a wounded soul implores revenge, send fell contagion to infect this clime, this cursed country where the traitors breathe, whose perjury as proud Briareus beleaguers all the sky with misbelief. He promised, Arthur, and he swore it too, to fence thy right and check thy foeman's pride. But now, black spotted perjurer as he is, he takes a truce with Eleanor's damned brat, and marries Louis to her lovely niece, sharing thy fortune and thy birthday's gift. Between these lovers, ill betide the match. And as they shoulder thee from out thy own, and triumph in a widow's tearful cares, so heavens cross them with a thriftless course. Is all the blood ye spilt on either part, closing the crannies of the thirsty earth, grown to a love game and a bridal feast? And must thy birthright bid the wedding bands? Poor helpless boy, hopeless and helpless too, to whom misfortune seems no yoke at all. Thy stay, thy state, thy imminent mishaps woundeth thy mother's thoughts with feeling care. Why look'st thou pale? The color flies thy face. I Trouble now the fountain of thy youth, and make it muddy with my dole's discourse. Go in with me, reply not, lovely boy. We must obscure this moan with melody, lest worser wrack ensue our malcontent. And that's the end of the scene. So Constance is not taking this well. She is not happy about this, and she is not taking it well. First, she starts out trying to curse all of everybody else that's around. She curses France, she curses England. She's like, these are traitors who we're working with. She's like, King Philip promised us and swore to us that he would uphold your claim. And now he's been tricked by Eleanor into marrying Louis and Blanche together and giving them your birthright. What sense does that make? This is totally unfair, and like they're just sort of shoving you out of the picture. This works nicely for them to not have a war, but the whole point here was you're supposed to be king, and they took that away from you, and they are giving those rights to Louis and Blanche, and John is going to remain king. This is like we've been completely betrayed and completely thrown out in the cold in this whole thing. And she's like, and now there's just you and me, and who knows what they're going to do to you. She mentions Arthur's imminent mishaps. That could mean anything. They could be out to get him. They could, they could banish him. They could kill him. They could do whatever now because they are so powerful. And now it's just her and Arthur. And she's like, this is what I'm worried about, and this is why I'm not as optimistic as you are. But then she looks at him and she sees that she's actually scaring him, and so she sort of apologizes for that, like, you shouldn't have to worry about this, and we need to put on a brave face through all of this, and move forward. Maybe not like ruffle the feathers too much more moving forward. We need to just go along with this. So it's a little bit heartbreaking, and this is how the scene ends. We had this play that started out with a thing about succession to the crown, and already it's over, and Constance and Arthur are literally left to fend for themselves, even though he should be the rightful king of England. So with that being the end of Act 1, Scene 4, it's sort of fair to compare this to Act 2, Scene 1 of Shakespeare's version. Act 2, Scene 1 in Shakespeare's version, the whole thing takes place in front of Angiers, and it starts with the, I'm not giving up the crown, and hey, let's go fight about it, and let's come back, and hey, citizens, who do you think won? And the citizens are like, well, we don't think either of you won, so the bastard steps up and says, join forces, level the city, and they're like, great idea, and the citizen, who's named Hubert, in Shakespeare's play, is like, why don't you marry the two of them? So then the two of them essentially, like, they sort of get married right there. They're told to like hold hands and kiss each other, which is almost like a marriage rite, but they do say that they need to go and have like a formal ceremony after that. But the big difference is after they've gone to have their fight, and then they come back and ask the townspeople who won, who are they are going to acknowledge as king of Angiers, Constance and Arthur aren't there. So Constance finds out about all of this after the fact, and she gets to have a massive meltdown at the top of Act 3, Scene 1 in Shakespeare's version. And she gets to have that meltdown like directly at the kings who did this. Some of it is towards Arthur, some of it is towards Salisbury, but then the kings come in because they're getting ready for this wedding, and she gets to really unload on them there, as opposed to this one, which this is still a heartbreaking speech for her, realizing what has gone on there, but then also realizing that she needs to protect and take care of her son, Arthur, and maybe shield him from some of this. But this is, she doesn't get to say it to the people who directly hurt her, whereas in Shakespeare's version, she does. And that makes her, in Shakespeare's version, maybe more powerful, maybe more tragic. I don't know, you decide. So anyway, where we are in things, in In the Troublesome Reign, we have just finished Act 1, Scene 4. In Shakespeare's version, we are at about halfway through Act 3, Scene 1, after Constance has a meltdown. So anyway, they're not going to line up exactly, but we are going to cover basically the same story because, you know, there was only one King John at that time who ruled England and had a troublesome reign. So anyway, I will see you tomorrow for more. Mwah.